Disc golf is a complex sport utilizing many phases across the lower body and upper body during a throw. In the lower body, there are 4 phases in order from acceleration, the X step, the planting phase, and the hip swing. In the upper body, there are 3 phases: the reach back, the pull through, and wrist snap.
The acceleration phase is performed through a run-up toward the end of the tee pad. The purpose of the acceleration phase is to gain horizontal velocity. This is so one can have more power when throwing the disc.
In the video, you can see Micah start roughly 4 meters behind the marker. He then drives his knees up, which creates hip flexion, which is a pivotal part in the running motion.
The X step serves as a transition period for the thrower's whole body to rotate from forward to sideways, thus transferring the lower limb movement from the sagittal plane into the transverse plane. The goal of the X step is to maintain the horizontal velocity that was built up during the acceleration phase.
In the video, we can see Micah medially rotate his ankle in his lead foot to start the transition of turning his body from forward to sideways. His trail leg will then cross behind the lead leg, fully moving his body out of the frontal plane into the transverse plane.
In the plant phase, the thrower drives their lead foot into the ground. This gives them a solid base, allowing them to transfer their body weight from their back leg through their plant foot.
The plant phase is also where friction plays a large role. Most players will opt to play in some form of hiking shoe. This way that if they are playing in rain or on rough terrain, they can try and help increase the static friction coefficient, which will prevent slipping. When going for max distance, it is normally seen to have players off of a dry concrete pad instead of grass. Beginner players, however, may neglect these 3 beginning phases for many reasons. For example, they could lack the coordination and timing necessary to make the power generated worth it. Another reason could be a loss of accuracy. They may make the decision to prioritize accuracy and consistency over a farther and uncontrolled shot.
In the hip swing phase, the thrower's goal is to turn their horizontal velocity into a max angular velocity. This is done by laterally rotating on the plant foot and swinging the trail leg around from close to maximum hip extension to a medial hip flexion on the follow-through. Most of a thrower's power will come from this phase. Using the equation power equals force times displacement, we can conclude that this is an explosive movement. The shorter distance that a player can rotate around leads to a faster and more forceful drive out of the lower body.
In the video, we can see Micah rotating hard around his plant foot, dropping his trail leg hip into the throw, which leads to his body's center of gravity falling in front of him. This causes him to finish the movement in front of the marker disc. We can also observe Micah's trail leg transfer the power fully from that leg into his plant leg. This can be observed in the angles at which his legs are flexed. His plant leg is almost 180 degrees until the hip swing causes his back leg to break. This causes his right leg to be flexed and rotate through the rest of the throw.
Looking back at the X step phase, we can see the upper body begin to activate. The reach back phase is the first of 3 upper body movements. The purpose of the reach back phase is to allow the player to create a radius, which can be used in calculating the release speed of the disc from the player's hands.
This phase requires almost perfect timing to be translated well in a throw. This is achieved by having a max reach back occur as the plant phase is happening. The shoulder will abduct away from the midline so that during later phases, a forceful return can be made. Max shoulder separation is also desired during the reach back so that during the pull-through phase, the non-throwing arm can be used to generate momentum behind the thrower's body and disc.
The pull-through is one of the most variable dependent phases during a backhand throw. If the timing of the lower body is off from the upper body, it could cause an early or late release, leading to poor accuracy and distance. The pull-through phase is the main component of the disc's launch angle as well as release speed. A player wants to achieve numbers in the 60 to 75 mile per hour range with a positive launch angle so that the disc can have as much time in the air as possible for flight.
Once again, this phase requires almost perfect timing with the lower body. Instead of the plant phase, the pull-through phase will match with the hip swing. As the hip drops, the throwing arm will begin to swing back around the body, pulling the shoulder immediately across the chest of the thrower. The elbow will also break, causing flexion of the biceps brachii. This will then create strain energy, which can be converted into kinetic energy, creating the work that is applied to the disc throughout its flight.
Like the pull-through, many independent variables are present during the wrist snap. Some examples can include the hyzer angle, the nose angle, and the revolutions per minute. Each one of these variables can affect the disc flight, so it is about finding the perfect combination of the variables to achieve the desired shot.
In the video, we can observe Micah releasing the disc on a slight hyzer angle and 0 to slightly negative nose angle, both of which are ideal when trying to achieve max distance. Revolutions per minute are achieved by combining the pull-through phase velocity into the dorsiflexion of the wrist upon release. Higher RPMs will lead to a throw that can fight uncontrollable variables like wind. The RPMs will help the disc cut through the wind so that it is not pushing so hard against the edge of the disc, thus shortening flight. In 2003, an essay was written by Sarah Ann Hummel titled Frisbee Flight Simulation and Throw Biomechanics. In this, she utilized physics and biomechanics to write equations specifically meant for optimizing a throw in ultimate frisbee or disc golf. While she was able to come up with many predictions on what variables would lead to the best throws, there was no quick and accurate way to retrieve data for an experiment to be ran. While attempts were made to track throws, nothing was able to provide results accurately and precisely enough to players for the investments to be worth it. However, in 2023, a new company emerged. Tech Disc Incorporated out of Overland Park, Kansas, seemed to have cracked the code in throw tracking. Through a small computer puck that is installed on the flight plate of a disc, a player can accurately get results for 6 data fields within seconds after throwing the disc. This was a ginormous step for the disc golf training scene, as players can now make changes to see results in real time to know what is out of sync in a specific throw. Tech Disc can track a player's release speed, spin rate, wobble, nose angle, hyzer angle, and launch angle. In training, a player could spend sessions working on one specific field. As said previously, a 0 degree to slightly negative nose angle is ideal when throwing. However, nose up is one of, if not the most common mistakes made by low-level amateurs and beginners. Tech disc can give that player who throws nose up the opportunity to work a whole training session, building muscle memory to start bringing their nose angle down to a competitive level, thus leading to further shots the next time they go and play. While it is designed for and mostly used by disc golfers looking to train, many members of the disc golf community wanted to see what the best of the best throwers' data would look like. Tech Disc listened and has brought their product to many professional distance competitions, like the PDGA World's Distance Competition in August of 2024. Thankfully, Tech Disc posts the results of these throws on their website for players to look at and find out if they really could beat the pros. Thomas Gilbert out of Toronto, Canada, ranked 92nd in the world and rated 1015, happened to have the most throws with a Tech Disc this year at the World's competition. He was able to average 77.2 miles per hour release speed, roughly 1500 RPMs, 1.6 degrees of wobble, 26.1 degrees of hyzer. Take in mind, this is going for max distance, so his angle would normally be lower. Negative 2.6 degrees of nose angle, and a positive 9.2 degrees of launch angle. Stats like this were able to help Thomas achieve a fourth place finish with a max throw of 655 feet. As mentioned earlier, many amateurs utilize the Tech Disc in their throws. This technology would be very helpful when looking at a player's biomechanics. However, the biggest negative Tech Disc Incorporated faces is a retail price of $300, well out of the budget of most college students. Thankfully, Wingspan Disc Golf out of Ord, Nebraska graciously loaned their Ferry Driver Tech Disc to our group so we could compare personal data of an amateur to a touring professional. Therefore, introducing Thomas Gilbert's competitor, myself, Micah Henshin out of Bancroft, Nebraska, unranked and rated 929. In the beginning of November, I was able to finally throw with a Tech Disc to get the much anticipated results. Over 14 throws attempting to reach max distance, I achieved surprisingly good data. I came in at 62.3 miles per hour release speed, 1100 RPMs, 1.5 degrees of wobble, beating Thomas Gilbert, 16.1 degrees of hyzer, negative 1.1 degrees of nose angle, and 5.2 degrees of launch angle. There were potential error in my testing, as I had just played a tournament consisting of 36 holes of disc golf, so fatigue could result in lower release speeds and RPMs. However, this data can help reveal where the pros outshine the amateurs. These are being speed and spin. This ultimately shows the importance of biomechanics in a player's throw, because by making a slight adjustment in a phase, big results can happen in terms of efficiency and power.
Though many variables are involved, the main phases completed by a thrower affecting a disc's flight are the acceleration, X-step, plant, hip swing, reach back, pull through, and wrist snap phases. With technology like Tech Disc Incorporated, future research can be conducted, making attempts to optimize players' skill levels and push the limits of human performance with regards to disc golf.